In India, when we were framing the constitution, we transplanted some portions from the British Convention, some portions from the Irish law, some portions from the Russian law, some portions from the different constitutions of the world. In case of certain laws, for example, Contract Act, evidence, CPC, and most of the substantive laws that we have today, they were basically transplanted from the UK law. And even at the time of pre-independence, there was this concept of JEGC, Justice, Equity and Good Conscience, under which the British common law was nearly incorporated or transplanted into India. So when there is a mechanism of law making in the form of transplanting of a foreign law into the domestic law, there still remain certain, if we may say, certain heartburns or certain aspects which are not readily adjustable. Hence, we saw this great movement in the court processes and the procedural law to be shifted towards less rigorous format. Hence, we developed. It's not only one reason, but yes, we recognize that yes, the parallel adjudicatory processes, ADR processes, and less rigorous procedural laws needs to be developed. So, when there is a prominent aspect involved in legislation that is of transplant, there are certain shortcomings. There are certain difficulties in implementation. So in academics, we also study a branch of law which is called as the comparative law. So considering all of that, the term transnational law is coined so that you refer, a country refers to the principles of a foreign law, referring to the principles of a foreign law, but adopting in our own jurisprudence. So we adopt our own jurisprudence, we adopt as per our needs, but we don't adopt and we implement in totality the foreign jurisprudence. So what is the difference here? The difference vis-a-vis the international law is entirely different body. It has its entirely different jurisprudence, which states everywhere this law should be understood with its international character in mind. So this is a guidance to the domestic judiciary that please bear in mind the international character of this particular law. This is not the same with the transnational law. Transnational law, there are focused team of legislators, drafters, which are sitting in a particular country, let's say in India. We refer to provisions, some principles from the US law, from British law, from Australia, from some UN model law, and then we draft our particular legislation. Then when the courts are implementing that particular legislation, they will look into certain guidance. What is the guidance that they will usually look? They will usually look for guidance from the domestic jurisprudence and for certain principles that are in consonance with the domestic jurisprudence. So that is why the new jurisprudence can be shaped and is shaped. So that is why it is a very interesting aspect. Transnational law is a very interesting aspect where a country's jurisprudence can be developed. And this is the way it has been developed in several modern countries, in Europe, in the USA. The danger is if a country like India, or let's say a country like Sri Lanka or Pakistan, they choose to adopt a law based upon a US law or a UK law, they will unconsciously also adopt their principles and the jurisprudence without developing their own jurisprudence. So the danger lies in India if we adopt or if we look for transplanting of a foreign law and also adopting its jurisprudence, there will be difficulties. There are bound to be difficulties. So one good example I can refer to you is the insolvency law, the recently drafted Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. The basic principles are from the World Bank guidance on insolvency, which is again influenced in a great deal from the US bankruptcy law and also the EU bankruptcy law, which US bankruptcy law in itself has been influenced from the common law. So what do we see now? So common law developed 150 years back, but it was into a rudimentary form, basically some sort of lex mercatoria, usages, customs, non-codified law. Then the US adopted into a more systematic form, drafted a code. Then again, now what is happening? From the UK common law principles, the US modern bankruptcy code is being developed. From that UK model bankruptcy code, the UK is adopting its modern bankruptcy law. Similarly, other countries also, they are like Australia, they're also developing their laws considering all of these processes. So when India adopted, we drafted the insolvency law, there was this committee, the BLRC, and they took into consideration these various aspects, and they drafted a law which was modeled quite a bit upon the World Bank guidance and adopted to a certain extent some principles from the UK insolvency law. But now when the implementation has started, now the adjudicatory mechanism is the tribunal, the National Company Law Tribunal, NCLT, NCLAT. So when they started implementing the law, they had to refer to a domestic jurisprudence. They cannot refer, and they have seldomly referred to foreign jurisprudence. This is the good part. We have a great body of cases, which is, we can certainly say with confidence that it is jurisprudence from India. Wherever required, some reference is taken, but even probably most of the participants, they might not be very conscious that to what extent they are incorporating the foreign law. But yes, this is I will say that these are the instances that we require. The lawyers, the judiciary, there is a close cooperation, there is a close interaction. They are understanding the laws, legal systems, and the processes. And ultimately, whatever is conducive in the environment in India for the courts, for the people, that is being adopted and implemented. So, what is the way forward? Certainly, the way forward is that there has to be a holistic approach. Holistic approach is that the world is a globalized world. There are several cross-border connections, cross-border interactions, and whatever law that you read cannot be read in isolation just to the domestic circumstances. Either you become an advisor, you become a practitioner in a a law firm, maybe a global law firm or an India-based law firm. First question that anybody would ask you is, well, what is in my interest? And then you will look into the aspects of what can be the most suitable governing law, what can be the most suitable jurisdiction. So you have those aspects of seat of arbitration versus the venue of arbitration. So you have to think. Then you have to think what should be the governing law. If it's the Indian government will say, oh no, it has to be the India governing law. But if there are two different countries, private parties, then there's going to be a dispute. There's going to be a discussion, negotiation. So maybe the Irish fellow will say we want the British law. The American fellow, the Indian fellow will say we want the Indian law. And then ultimately they will choose, well, let's agree upon Singapore or New York. So these are the discussions that you will look. So you have to know the cross-border laws, and that is why, and that is how you can advise your clients. You will know that what are the pros and cons of a particular law or a jurisdiction or a legal system. And hence, my young friends, my suggestion to you is, well, the study of law is holistic. You will read the basic principles, but Certainly, when you move forward, try to look for closer and greater interactions into the cross-border laws, and transnational law certainly is a way forward. And I will certainly encourage you and suggest to you is that future is yours. It is how you can adopt, implement the foreign law into the domestic circumstances which serves our people well. So when you will move forward into some maybe academic situations or policy situations, the experienced professionals or the senior policy makers will ask you one question: well, what is good for India? So you have to take a decision. You have to explain whether it is good for you or not, whether it's good for us or not. So in that way, we will say yes, China is good. It is very fiercely nationalistic in all aspects. It has put whatever it has done to the IPR of US is another matter, but certainly it is the arbitration institutions are being so. There is they are neutral. I will not say that there is a bias, but it depends upon the lawyers, it depends upon the experts, it depends upon the professionals. What is the way in which you want to interpret the laws? What is the way in which you want to mold your domestic jurisprudence? Thank you for the patient hearing. I hope I was able to convey some message to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.